It was late summer, almost fall. I was the only passenger on the last bus headed out of town. Just me and the driver. We'd turned off the main highway and were winding through a rural stretch toward my neighborhood. Then, out of nowhere, a car swerved into our lane. The driver jerked the wheel to avoid a head-on collision, and we veered off the road. I remember the screech of tires, the scream of metal twisting. Then everything flipped. The bus crashed sideways into a ditch that separated the road from a stretch of overgrown land and woods. I was lucky. Pure reflex. I grabbed onto a seat back and held on. When the bus finally stopped moving, I found myself upside down, somehow still conscious. The front door was smashed and buried in dirt. I climbed out through the roof hatch, still half in shock, my limbs aching, the world tilted and blurred. Then, darkness. I blacked out. Maybe more than once. The first time I came to, I was lying face down on the edge of an open field, maybe 30 feet from the road. My right hand was buried in something thick, wet, and strangely cold. A slime that clung to my skin. The second time I woke, I could feel arms carrying me, someone whispering. The third time, I was in an ambulance. A nurse waved smelling salts under my nose. Another was wiping my palm with a wet cloth. I saw the green slime still clinging to my skin. Eventually, my mom arrived. The paramedics said I was lucky, just bruises, no concussion, no broken bones. They told my mom to keep me in bed for a few days, let the shock pass. She cried the whole ride home. That night, I had the dream. It wasn't even a dream. It was the crash all over again. The same car, the same swerve, the same silence after the impact. But this time, I saw the field. I saw the swamp. And something in it. It started with a bubbling sound, like something breathing thick, putrid air. Then came the voice. Wet, gurgling, like someone drowning while trying to speak. It said my name. It wanted me to come closer. I took a step toward it, then another. My whole body screamed in fear, but I couldn't stop. That's when I woke up, soaked in sweat, my sheets damp and twisted, my heart racing. The next morning, over coffee, I told my mom about the dream. She brushed it off. Honey, with what you've been through, I'm not surprised. Give it a few days. But when I mentioned the green slime on my hand, she froze. Oh, that must be from the marsh. There's a swamp near where the bus crashed. Didn't you know? I didn't. There's even an old burned out cabin nearby, she added. The dreams didn't stop. Every night the voice called. Every night the swamp bubbled. And every night I walked a little closer in my sleep. Until one morning I woke up and that same hand was covered in dried green muck. And it stank. Like meat left in the sun. Like something rotting. I didn't tell my mom. Instead, I went to visit my grandmother, my dad's mom. She lived a few blocks away, right near that same field. And as it turns out, she knew exactly what was buried in that swamp. My grandmother lived just a few blocks from the crash site, close enough that she'd heard the sirens that night. When I showed up at her front door, she looked surprised but didn't ask questions. She always said I looked too much like my dad to lie to her. She made tea, like always, sat me down at the little round kitchen table with a floral tablecloth that hadn't changed since I was a kid. The air smelled like old wood and lavender, and her cat watched me from the windowsill. "You're not here for the crash," she said after a moment. "You're here because of what came after." I stared at her. "How do you know that?" She tapped her finger twice on the table. "Because I've heard it too." The words dropped into me like a stone. A cold pressure settled in my chest. She went quiet for a moment, then began talking, her voice low, like we weren't alone. She told me the swamp had been strange for decades, since her childhood, and even before. People used to say it was cursed. Animals would vanish, hunters would go missing. People saw lights at night that weren't headlights or flashlights, just a dull green glow hovering above the reeds. But what caught my attention was the story of the house. There used to be a little cabin right at the edge of the marsh, she said. A young woman lived there with her little girl. Outsiders moved in from God knows where, friendly enough but distant. Nobody really knew them. I sipped my tea, trying to push down the crawling sense of dread. One night, the house caught fire. No one knew how it started. My dad, just a teenager back then, was the first to see it. He was walking home late and saw the smoke. He ran toward it without thinking, kicked in the back door, and pulled them both out. But she went back in, my grandmother said. Said she forgot something, never came back out. The fire consumed the house. They found no body. People assumed she got caught in a beam collapse, Grandma whispered. But the girl, she kept saying something else. I leaned in. She told the firemen her mom didn't die in the fire, that something from the swamp took her. I sat in stunned silence. She said her mom was calling her name, but not from inside the house, from underneath it, from the mud. According to Grandma, the girl survived. Barely. Severe burns. Smoke inhalation. But her story never changed. She was eventually taken in by a neighbor named Nina, then passed off to distant relatives years later. Do you know her name? I asked. Vera, Grandma said. Her name was Vera. Something about the name stuck, like I'd heard it in a dream. After that, we sat in silence, listening to the old clock on the wall tick away the seconds. I left a short time later, needing to clear my head. I didn't mean to, but my feet carried me right back toward the field. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the tall grass. The burnt remains of the cabin sat crooked and broken, hidden behind overgrown weeds, and then I saw it again. The swamp. Still. Silent, but wrong. The water wasn't moving, but something underneath it was. Bubbles began to surface. One. Then another. Then dozens. The surface churned like boiling water. Then came the stench. Rotting meat. Swamp gas. Something ancient and sick. A gust of wind rolled in, cold and wet, like it came from beneath the earth. And then something touched me. My hand. I looked down, the same one. It was soaked again, drenched in that same green slime. I hadn't touched anything. I turned and ran, not looking back. That night, I slept in my clothes with the lights on. I didn't dream, but the smell lingered. And I knew whatever was in that swamp had touched me now. It had chosen me. Chosen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed up in my room with the lights on, staring at my hand. I'd scrubbed it with everything I had, soap, bleach, baking soda, but the smell wouldn't go away. It was in my skin. Beneath it, rot, decay, the stench of something old and wrong. And the worst part, it wasn't just a smell anymore. There were marks on my palm now, not scratches, not bruises, lines, symbols, almost. Like something had gripped me hard enough to leave its imprint, or maybe had written something into me. I didn't tell my mom. What could I even say? Instead, I texted my grandma around 2 a.m. Do you still have a way to reach Vera? She didn't reply. But the next morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Hello? I answered. Is this the boy who asked about Vera? Her voice was soft, warm, familiar somehow. Yeah, That's me. This is Nina. I took care of her when she was little. She's coming back into town tomorrow. Maybe you two should talk. The next afternoon, I met Vera. She was in her late 20s, maybe. Pale, serious eyes, not cold, just distant. Like someone who'd seen too much and didn't want to talk about it anymore. We sat outside at a little cafe. She kept glancing toward the woods. I heard about your crash, she said eventually. And the dreams. I nodded. The green slime, the bubbling, the voice. Every night. She inhaled deeply, like she'd been waiting to hear those words from someone else for years. It's her, Vera said. My mom. I didn't say anything, just let her talk. She didn't die in the fire. Not really. Something in the swamp took her. I heard her voice that night, calling me from under the floorboards, like she was buried in the mud. But it wasn't her anymore, it just wore her voice. I felt sick. My stomach turned. She's still down there, Vera said. Or what's left of her. And now she wants someone else. I swallowed hard. Me? Vera looked at me with those ancient eyes. She touches those who come too close. Leaves a mark. That's how she feeds. That's how she pulls them in. I looked down at my hand, at the faint lines burned into my palm. I don't want her, I said. You don't get to choose. We sat in silence for a long time. Then, quietly, she said, I think you can stop it. If we find her body, what's left of it, and give it peace, that's the only thing that stopped the dreams for me. Until now. The next morning, a group from the local fire rescue department agreed to help. I told them there was evidence of a long missing person buried in the swamp. I didn't tell them about the dreams. They brought dogs, sonar equipment, metal rods. Vera and I stood at the edge, just watching. It didn't take long. An hour in, one of them shouted, "We've got something." They started digging. Carefully, slowly. I couldn't watch. I turned away until I heard someone retch. When I looked, I saw it. A shape tangled in reeds and decay. A body, or what had once been one, mostly bones now wrapped in fragments of a dress and skin that had turned green with age and water. Her mouth was wide open, screaming, frozen in time. The rescuers were silent. One of them crossed himself. I couldn't breathe. Vera stepped forward. She knelt beside the remains, whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she turned to me and nodded. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept through until morning. No dreams, no slime, no voice. When I woke up, my hand was clean, but I still visit the edge of the swamp sometimes, just to be sure. And once, just once, I thought I saw bubbles rising again.